If you don't understand Tibet, you will never understand China. And China will be the biggest challenge that they will face.
Hello and welcome to the Gist for StratNews Global. This is Nayanima Basu. I have with me today Dr. Lobsang Sangay. He is currently traveling in India. He teaches law at the Harvard University, but of course, he's the former president of the Tibetan government in exile. We are going to understand from him the India China dynamics that is currently again on the road to rapprochement, but where it leaves the entire issue of Tibet, the reincarnation of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and eventually what happens to the movement, the Tibetan movement. Welcome to the Gist, Dr. Sangyan, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Good to see you, Basuji.
Thank you. Good to see you too. So quickly understand from you, Dr. Sangay, what brings you to India? I know it's been almost a 2 week long travel. How has the visit been? Have you been able to meet any government official? And what is the general sense you're getting from Indians at large on the issue of Tibet currently?
Yes, it's been 4 years since I left my office. So I've not visited many of the universities in India, even though I've been receiving invitations. So this time I made it a point to visit, 14 universities and think tanks and conferences. So, I was been in Delhi and then Ahmedabad, Baroda, Calcutta, Hyderabad, Mumbai, and making rounds. And reception has been very good. The Indian youth have been very receptive to the issue of Tibet in the context of China and India. And yes, I have not been meeting Indian officials per se. This is not an official visit, but I have some friends in Delhi, So I've been meeting them and they have been very positive.
Okay, but when you see the kind of the issue that has been under discussion, I would rather say in the last couple of years, it has gained momentum since the time there was a U.S. congressional delegation visiting Dharamsala, and of course, China has now started making a lot of noise, statements, and discussions on the fact that how the reincarnation process will be. We also heard from His Holiness on the fact that how he will be, he said that the next his successor will be born in a free world. So but then India and China now again on talking terms. Do you think this is time India really discusses and puts Tibet on the negotiating table when it is talking to China?
Yes, I think what India can do is tell China, don't interfere in the reincarnation process. It is for Dalai Lama to decide, and he has decided that he will not be born inside China. He will be born in Freehold. And then, they don't believe in religion. Communist parties say religion is poison, and they have vilified and criticized His Holiness Dalai Lama throughout his life. It's none of their business. They have no right, no legitimacy in interfering in the process of reincarnation. It is for Tibetans to decide, and we will decide and we will choose the next Dalai Lama. And we are very happy that His Holiness has blessed us with this reincarnation. But we also pray and hope and believe that His Holiness Dalai Lama live very, very long.
But then we've heard from the Chinese saying that this is their internal matter, and they also put forward the discussion and the kind of thing that they say is the fact that the current Dalai Lama has also been approved by the approval from the official approval of the communist government. What do you have to say to that?
The recognition of 14 Dalai Lama has nothing whatsoever to do with the Chinese government. First of all, the Communist Party was not even there, right? And then they overthrew the Kuomintang party. They say one of the mountains, right? So China has no interference in the selection of 13 Dalai Lama and 14 Dalai Lama. That was also made very clear by including Tibetan officials who work for the Chinese government in China. So they have never done that, and they have no right to interfere in the selection of 15 Dalai Lamas as well. This is not the internal or external affairs. This is simply the choice of His Holiness Dalai Lama. It's his reincarnation. He decides when and where to be born, and he decided to be born outside of China.
Okay, I completely hear you, and I hear both sides actually saying that. But do you think to some extent India needs to now take it up officially? And also the fact that when the Dalai Lama says that his successor will be born in a free world, does he mean that that his successor may not be born in India or in India? Can you give some clarity on that?
When he said that his successor will be born in, his reincarnation will be born in free world, India is part of the free world. China is not part of the free world. North Korea is not part of the free world, right? So that has made very clear. And then, yes, it could be in India as well.
Okay, but also the fact that I mean, I was recently in Tibet last month, and I saw the kind of development they are having across Tibet. Chinese President Xi Jinping had traveled to Tibet twice now, and he's taken up it up as a policy priority. Where do you see then the movement goes from now? It's been almost over. It's going to be 7 decades now since His Holiness came to India in 1959. But where do you see the next phase will be? Because what you are seeing, we've heard that, but what should be the next phase, do you think, now that India and China are also planning to go in for some kind of an early harvest as far as the settling of the border question is concerned?
Now, I think you asked several questions. First of all, I must admire your courage and your objectivity. That the fact that the Chinese government invited you to visit, Mansarovar and Mount Kailash, is indication that they also want to co-opt you. They want to kind of, oil your palm, so to speak. The fact that you're talking to me clearly shows that you're objective. You're a very, fair journalist and wants, to present the objective side of the story. Now, as far as China is concerned, no, they will open the Mansarovar route occasionally to show a thaw to improve the relationship. But Chinese strategy has always been two steps forward, one step backward, right? So the border incursion is very real. They are incurred the Chinese troops are moving into the border areas of India for 60 plus years. And they will continue to do so because I've always said this: Tibet is the palm. They come out of five fingers. Ladakh, Nepal, Bhutan, Sikkim, and Arunachal. So they keep coming after five fingers because anyone who controls the Himalaya, China says, will dominate South Asia or India. So that's their plan. So they will keep coming after you, and then occasionally they will say, "Oh, we must have mutual respect and we must build our relationship." But each time India tries, often China is the one who betrays India.
Well, no, that's correct. But again, I was not part of the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, but I went later on to understand what is the situation on the reincarnation that is happening in Lhasa, and also I was in Ningchi, in places like that. But then it is very clear when, and I was part of an international media delegation, and they were telling them that they are also prepared for a situation where there can be two Dalai Lamas. One will be legitimate, which is, of course, what the Chinese, whom the Chinese government will elect, and the other one will be illegitimate. How would you, if that kind of a situation arises, where does your movement then remain, and how will you? Are you prepared for that kind of a probability?
Yes, because China already selected fake pension lama, and no Tibetans follow that fake pension lama, and using golden urn, the Chinese claim. And then the fake pension lama, selected by China is not followed or respected by any Buddhists, in the world. So they will try to appoint fake pension lama, fake Dalai Lama, but there will be a fake one. And the one selected by Dalai Lama will be the right one or the original one because it is His Holiness the Dalai Lama's personal decision. It's his reincarnation. His conscience will travel and born into the womb of a woman and be born as a reincarnation. And he authorizes who will preside over the selection of the Dalai Lama. And he has already said his office, Ganden Forang, will coordinate, and monks, some lamas will lead. Historically, it's always a region, a monk region, who presides over the selection of Dalai Lama. So, meaning it's his decision to be born when and where, and he authorizes, and that particular region or regency will preside over the selection process based on his authorization. Now, number one, no one is asking China to select the next Dalai Lama. In fact, we are saying don't do it. No, all the Buddhists are saying don't do it. And His Holiness Dalai Lama, he has clearly said he will be born outside of China. He's not authorizing Chinese government or anyone in China to preside over the selection process. So they have zero credibility, zero legitimacy. And if you look at the history of last 60 years, they have destroyed 98% of the monasteries. 99% of monks and nuns were destroyed. And they're still destroying the statues of Buddha. They're still destroying the statues of Padmasambhava, so and so forth. They have destroyed and delegitimized Buddhism and religion and Dalai Lama throughout this year. What credibility do they have? Zero. Now, you also
Okay.
said you were taken to Ningqi. Ningqi is a very sensitive area. That's the military town of China. That's where the military airfield is built. That's where the Golmund to Lhasa to Ningqi fast train link is, established. Now they're bringing railway from Chengdu to Ningxi, from Xinjiang to Ningxi, and all the highways are being built. That means infrastructure-wise, they have prepared to cover whole of Himalayan belt, and they have built 300 villages from from Pakistan area all the way to Burma. So that shows that Chinese have prepared infrastructure to, if necessary, if they want to invade, let's say, Tawang or Arunachal, they could do so. So that Ningxi is a very sensitive place, and from military point of view, they have full infrastructure development.
Good that you said, but that is what exactly my question was. Do you think India is also equally prepared for that? Because tomorrow, when His Holiness passes away, this can be a very big issue between India and China. So, do you think India is prepared, or are you telling the Indian government that, listen, this is what the Chinese are doing, and I'm sure they're also well aware, but this is what you need to do as well? Because, as I've heard from you and several other senior Tibetan politicians like yourself, that the border is basically between India and Tibet. So, where does it leave India, you
Yes,
think?
historically, border has always between India and Tibet. Not even an inch of land border was between China and India. And you didn't have to go far. Look at all the manuscript in China, showing map or any document showing border connecting between China and India. Even the great Chinese monk Hun Sen, he traveled from China to Karakoram, from Afghanistan, Pakistan. He came to India. He didn't come through Tibet. So Tibet was never a part of China. Now, infrastructure-wise, China has developed. When the Doklam incident happened, India moved 50,000 troops face to face, and Galwan 150,000 Jawans from India's side, and China also brought 150,000 Jawans. So, in number-wise, India is prepared. Infrastructure-wise, no, because China is building high-speed railway, highways, airfields, and airports, and India is yet to develop that kind of major airfields. Let's say in Arunachal Pradesh, they have airport in Itanagar. That's about it. A railway line goes a little up north, and then you have to supply everything through trucks.
Mhm. Also, coming to the fact that the kind of support that your movement gets from the US, there's recently they also passed the Tibetan bill. They kind of refurbished it. How do you see the US government is kind of supporting it now under the Trump administration?
I think support for Tibet will continue because it was President Donald Trump who signed the Tibetan Policy in Support Act of 2020. It's a law in America to support Tibet. And that same law recognized or acknowledged Tibetan government exile and my office as a Sikyong. So my successor can enter the White House and the State Department, unlike me, who couldn't enter for 10 years. And finally, I did in November and December of 2020. Now, also in that law, one chapter is on reincarnation of Dalai Lama, which made it very clear. It is for the Dalai Lama to decide on his reincarnation and his followers, and China should not interfere. If China interferes, America says in that law, those officials will be sanctioned, will be penalized. So America has made a very strong statement and taken a strong stand on the issue of reincarnation and Tibet. So, and that law was signed by President Trump.
But do you think, looking at the kind of discussions, and very soon there will be a trade deal probably between between US and China, do you think this issue is going to be discussed? What is it the conversation you are having since you are based out of US?
I think there is consensus in US, whether it's Republican or Democrats, even among civil society and journalists, and obviously the government, that China is an adversary number one. China has declared so they want to be number one in the world and they want to replace America. So yes, there will be a trade agreements with China, but from President Trump's first term till now, even though that whatever percentage of tariff be imposed on China, overall from first term till now, 50% of tariff will be imposed on all Chinese goods from first term till now, including Biden, they all have increased. So before they could sell Chinese goods in America very cheaply, not so now.
Okay, so also, if I can ask you, Dr. Sangay, what is it that His Holiness is thinking? Because you're very close to him, and I'm sure you have this conversation with him on the fact that India and China are now again talking. Do you think they should be talking, and there should be a resumption of the dialogue? And also, what is the Tibetan community telling you about all the developments that is happening, and the fact that there are discussions of an early harvest in the border settlement issue?
Well, His Holiness Dalai Lama always believed that India should engage with all the countries in the world and India should develop, including with China. But you should be cautious, right? So India has more trade deficit with China India. India sells less things to China and buys more from China. That means less manufacturing, less factories in India, right? Now, if you look at the border, we already discussed. If you look at all the neighboring countries, Pakistan is all-weather friend of China, right? And then they're interfering in Nepal. They are trying to put a lot of pressure on Bhutan. They are already interfering in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka, and Maldives. So India is surrounded by all these neighbors, and all the neighbors are interfered, and Chinese influence is very strong. So clearly, what China is doing is constrain and limit India's growth and influence in the region.
Mhm. And my last question to you, Dr. Sangay, what do you think your message will be to the future generation, that the generation that has grown up now in India, the Tibetan community, to the youngsters? How should they take the movement forward? Because of course you've been one of the pioneers in that, telling under you the CTA got created. So both the political as well as the spiritual bodies of of your movement, what will be your message for the future?
For the future Tibetans, I've met, several Tibetan youth in Hyderabad and as well as in Baroda. And then they are getting better education, better exposure. And I've been meeting, youth, even in the US and Europe. I keep meeting them. I'm, in fact, more energized and I'm more optimistic in the sense, more hopeful in the sense that they're really talented, bunch. They're coming up. And Hakar movement, right? Tomorrow Wednesday, if you go to Dharamsala, to Belakupi, to Menko, to Darjeeling area, to Toronto, to New York, all of us come out and dance in Tibetan tradition attire with all the ornaments. So the younger generation are taking pride in their identity, celebrating it by wearing traditional dress and dancing it. And Hakar has been a major bottom up grassroots based revolution of sort led by Tibetan youth. And I also urge Indian youth to study more about Tibet. If you don't understand Tibet, you will never understand China. And China will be the biggest challenge that they will face. So, Indian youth and Tibetan youth should work together to understand each other and prepare for the better world so that the Hathi of India, the strongest animal in the world, becomes much, assertive, and then, and become number one in the world.
And just one question, since you spoke about the Tibetan youth here, do you think they are seeking more support from the government, or they are getting that support? Are they happy? What is it that they are telling you in terms of their growth? and the fact that they also have to take the movement forward.
Yes, I mean, we always say this. India has done the most for Tibetan people by far. India has been the best host that Tibetans could, hope for. Having said that, could Indian government do more? Could Indian universities do more by admitting more Tibetan students and, giving them PhD, getting them into PhD and, research related works and things like that? Absolutely, and more could be done, and I urge every university and think tanks in India to have a Tibetan studies program, because if you just have China studies without the Tibetan component, you will never fully understand China, and that will be your loss.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Sangay. So that was Dr. Lobsang Sangay, the former president of the Tibetan government in exile, telling the gist why it is important for India to understand the Tibetan issue, for the Tibetan youth to understand what India can give them, and to have the conversation going. Thank you for watching the interaction. For StratNews Global, this is Nayanima Basu.